A deep voice echoed from within the palace. Is that true? That's incredible news. So, we can start mass production soon, right? Yes, father, but there's one important thing we need to consider. His expression turned serious, sparking King Sejong's curiosity. The soybeans we're using come from the Neobal region. The current supply won't be enough because the people rely on it for their daily lives. Even the leftover pulp is used as animal feed, Hiang explained. King Sejong nodded slowly. National defense is important, but we must never ignore the people's well-being. The king took a deep breath before speaking again. You've worked hard, Crown Prince. Hiang bowed deeply. Thank you, father. I ask for your leave. As Hiang walked away, King Sejong remained seated on his throne, deep in thought. His face showed hesitation. The best solution still wasn't clear. Meanwhile, out in the palace courtyard, Hiang stood restlessly. He glanced back and noticed that the audience chamber doors had closed. He didn't even realize when. In his heart, he muttered, Father, I believe you'll find the answer. The sky stretched out clear and bright, with the sun now at its peak. Inside the palace, officials had gathered for an emergency meeting. King Sejong began the session, his voice full of authority. That boy has proposed a plan to supply glycerin. He then turned to his son. Crown Prince, explain your plan to everyone. With a firm nod, Hiang stepped forward. My proposal is to use soybean oil. The officials were stunned. They exchanged glances, clearly surprised by such an unexpected idea. I will encourage farmers to migrate to the northern borders to cultivate soybeans. The palace will purchase their entire harvest. This way, the people's livelihoods will become more stable. The king continued in a firm voice. With this plan, all our problems will be resolved, Hiang thought to himself. In addition, King Sejong said, we'll also buy pork fat and beef tallow at a fair price. The officials bowed respectfully. We will carry out your majesty's orders. With burning determination, the king clenched his knee and declared, I will treat this as the first step in strengthening Joseon's defenses. Carry it out carefully. Not a single mistake is allowed. In unison, the officials responded, We will obey your majesty's command. Hiang thought to himself, when it comes to the northern borders, there's an old legend. The names of two rivers there are said to mean soybeans. That place would be perfect. In that case, I must contribute to the northern region as well. Elsewhere, a soldier reported to an official, some new settlers have arrived. They want to work as farmers. The official nodded. All right, follow the usual procedures and give them a place to live. Without delay, the soldier gave a signal. Come with me. Because of this initiative, Hiang gave golden pens to the local officials. But instead of easing their workload, it only made things busier. Hold the jar steady and collect the oil, someone shouted. Be careful, don't spill any of it. The large stove was a gift from the crown prince. As everyone joyfully enjoyed grilled ribs, someone asked, Are officials really allowed to eat meat like this? A man beside him replied, For now, the supplies are prioritized for the military, but if you take good care of the soybean fields, one day, you'll get to eat like this too. However, there was one condition. He continued, When the time comes, you must collect the oil carefully and deliver it to the military workshop, just like they do at the royal palace. We're still short on gunpowder, Hiang muttered quietly. He let out a soft sigh. Even if we exploit the northern lands, it still won't be enough. Suddenly, an idea flashed through his mind. His eyes widened as he murmured, That's right. What about the southern region? Time passed. On a summer day when Hiang was 10 years old, King Sejong gathered his officials. It's time to find a husband for Princess Jeongso, King Sejong announced with a firm voice. One of the officials nodded. I believe the timing is just right, Your Majesty. Hiang turned his head in surprise. Jeongso is getting married? King Sejong smiled. Then let's discuss it. As you command, Your Majesty, the officials replied in unison. But in the original timeline, Princess Jeongso had already passed away. Now, in this life, she was going to get married. This feels strange, Hiang thought to himself. I don't want to, Jeongso whined. She sat in front of her father, her eyes full of pleading. I just want to stay with you and mother forever. King Sejong looked at her lovingly, but remained firm. I understand how you feel, but when the time comes, you'll need to meet your partner and start your own life. Still, I just want to stay with you a little longer, she said. Tears began to stream down her cheeks. King Sejong let out a deep sigh and murmured, She's such a stubborn child. I hate you, father, she shouted before running out of the room, ignoring King Sejong's attempts to calm her down. The next morning, as Hyang strolled through the palace courtyard, he noticed several palace maids rushing around in a panic. Curious, he asked one of the eunuchs, What's gotten the maids so worked up this early? The eunuch bowed. It seems the princess has been refusing to eat since yesterday. Hyang frowned. Refusing to eat? The eunuch pulled out a letter and said, A maid from the princess's quarters asked me to give this to you. Startled, Hyang quickly took the letter and read it. After finishing, he folded it carefully and nodded. All right, I need to go on a secret mission. Get ready, immediately. The two eunuchs nearby exchanged glances. A secret mission? Hyang winked. We have to do this without father knowing. The faster and more discreet, the better. Without hesitation, the eunuchs rushed off. Understood, Your Highness. Soon after, Hyang arrived at his sister's residence. Two maids bowed as soon as they saw the crown prince. "The crown prince has arrived," they announced. From inside the room came Jeongso's soft voice. "Let him in." Hyang stepped inside and waved a hand, signaling the maids to leave. Jeongso was still curled up under her blanket. Hyang sat at the edge of the bed and sighed. "You've been through a lot, sis." Suddenly, Jeongso threw off her blanket, revealing her tear-streaked face. She sat up and fixed her hair. Though her eyes still held traces of tears, her expression showed she was ready to talk. "You brought it, didn't you? Hurry, give it to me." Hyang sighed deeply. From his sleeve, he pulled out a small bundle and placed it in front of her. "Do you know how hard it was to get this?" he grumbled. "I had to go on a covert mission just to keep father from finding out." Jeongso grinned widely as she took out a rice ball from the package. "But this is really from the store I asked for, right?" she asked suspiciously. Hyang rested his chin on one hand. "Yes, it is. Anyway, just find some average guy and marry him already. If you don't, people will start calling you an old maid." That comment made Jeongso furious. She bit into her rice ball aggressively and pointed at Hyang, clearly upset. "Shut it! This is all your fault!" Hyang raised an eyebrow, confused. "Huh? What does your marriage have to do with me?" Jeongso clenched the rice ball tightly in her hand until it crumbled. Her body trembled with frustration. "Before I get married, I have to teach that brat a lesson," she said, with burning resolve. Hyang just shook his head. "I've got nothing to say to that," he muttered as he stood up. "I'll be going now." "Thanks for the rice balls," Jeongso replied. As Hyang walked away with his hands behind his back, he thought to himself, "Is she really serious about that?" Then he looked up at the sky and smiled faintly. "I might as well go see Yi Yu. I've still got one rice ball left." In a small gazebo at the center of the garden, two people sat side by side. When Hyang arrived, both of them looked startled. "Oh, Crown Prince," the teacher greeted. They stood and bowed respectfully. Hyang returned the gesture politely. "Sorry to interrupt. I was just passing by and thought I'd say hello. How's your lesson going?" Yi Yu lowered his head, then replied in a provocative tone, "It's going well. I've been working hard to at least reach the soles of your feet. But it seems you still have plenty of free time, brother." Hyang smiled, though he was boiling inside. Why is this kid so irritating? Even if I don't know how busy you are, your unworthy little brother here is doing his best to follow in your footsteps through diligent study. If there's nothing else, before Yi Yu could finish, Hyang cut him off. "All right, excuse me. Please continue your lesson." Hyang ended the conversation abruptly and thought to himself, but he acts completely different in front of Jeongso, like a mouse trembling before a cat. On the other hand, Yi Yu was determined to rise and conquer the world once his sister, Jeongso, was married. As the sun began to set, golden light bathed the corners of the royal palace. Inside the council chamber, the sound of heated arguments echoed. None of the officials were willing to back down. Meanwhile, the king sat in silence. His anger was growing more visible, his fists clenched tightly, veins bulging on his hands. But the officials continued bickering, arguing over which merchant should receive trade rights. "Enough! That's enough!" The king's voice was sharp and piercing. "Has anyone here actually listened to a word I've said? How many days has it been since I ordered you to come up with a solution and create a proper plan?" His gaze swept across the room. "I asked for concrete steps to resolve the sugar trade monopoly, but all you've done is fight over which merchant deserves the rights. And now, you're shamelessly admitting who bribed you and how much you were paid." The officials instantly dropped to their knees, drenched in cold sweat. "Your Majesty, we deserve to be executed. Please punish us." "You want to die?" the king replied coldly. "I'll consider that after I reevaluate this entire policy." "We'll give it our all, Your Majesty," they cried in unison. "I placed you in these positions because I trusted my judgment. Don't make me regret that decision." Trembling, the ministers answered, "We won't forget, Your Majesty." King Sejong let out a long breath and sat back down, trying to contain his anger. Later that night, the king lay awake, troubled by thoughts of his ministers. Can I really entrust important responsibilities to people who aren't even as capable as an 11-year-old child? At the princess's residence, two eunuchs walked through the courtyard. Inside, Jeongso was reading a book while enjoying some snacks. Suddenly, a eunuch's voice called out, "His Majesty has arrived." Jeongso raised an eyebrow in confusion. Then it hit her. Her expression froze, and her face turned pale. She quickly dove under her blanket just as the door opened. King Sejong entered. "Jeongso, are you not feeling well?" Without thinking, Jeongso jumped into bed and pulled the covers over her entire body. "I greet your Majesty," she said, her voice muffled under the blanket. Her chubby cheeks puffed up in a childish pout. The king was taken aback. His heart melted for a moment, but he quickly regained composure. Clearing his throat, his eyes caught something. In the corner of the room, he noticed several snack bags piled up. A faint smile appeared on his lips. "So, this little rascal's been sneaking around for the past 2 days because of her sister." But, with a serious tone, the king said, "First of all, I'm canceling your engagement." Jeongso was stunned, but almost instantly her face lit up with joy. She jumped into her father's arms. The king gently stroked her hair. "You silly girl, you need to take care of your health, especially as a princess." After leaving the princess's residence, the king walked alongside the queen. "Was that really the right decision?" she asked. The king glanced at her. What do you mean? About Jeongso's marriage, the queen clarified. The ministers will probably be happy, King Sejong replied. It means less work for them. He paused, thoughtful. Actually, last night I dozed off and had a strange dream. In it, Jeongso died from an illness. I was devastated when I woke up. The fear still lingered. It took me a while to convince myself it was just a dream. He took a deep breath. Maybe I'm just not ready to let my daughter get married. The next morning at the palace, King Sejong sat with a furrowed brow as he read through a stack of proposals. Below the throne, officials stood in neat rows on either side, waiting in silence. After a while, he set the documents down and spoke slowly. I've reviewed all your proposals. They're better than before, but still not enough. The Ministry of Taxation's proposal completely misses the core of the policy. The Ministry of Rights' proposal is outdated, and the Personnel Ministry's plan, all flash, no substance. You all need to go back and review everything again. A few days later, the ministers gathered once more. Everyone looked exhausted. The chief advisor muttered to himself. The right state counselor, with dark circles under his eyes, sighed. Since that day, we've stayed up every night, thinking and planning everything down to the last detail, and yet, our efforts were still rejected. The chief advisor replied, Honestly, we all know what His Majesty really wants, don't we? This special trade policy was meant to prevent monopolies in the production and sale of certain goods. But instead, the nobles and local officials are exploiting it. The debate among the ministers continued. The issue of powerful merchants monopolizing the trade had sparked serious discontent in the king. One proposal after another was rejected, and still the arguments dragged on. Meanwhile, in a corner of the palace, Yi Yu stood frozen. His eyes were vacant, but behind them burned a deep, quiet rage. My name is Yi Yu, Prince of the Joseon Dynasty, he thought. His hands trembled, fists clenched tightly. It's been 3 years since I came to the palace, and this is the most dangerous moment I've ever faced. Suddenly, a cheerful voice broke through his thoughts. My dear brother, did you sleep well? Yi Yu remained silent, unmoving. From another direction, Jeongso approached and stared at him sharply. Why are you just standing there like an idiot? Aren't you going to greet your Hyungnim and Nunanim? Yi Yu finally snapped out of it and bowed quickly. Greetings, Hyungnim, Nunanim. Did you both sleep well last night? By the way, Hiang, has he been bothering you lately? He asked with a hint of sharpness. Hiang paused briefly, then smiled and patted Yi Yu on the shoulder. Not at all. He's actually been doing much better in his studies lately. Just the other day I saw him studying with great focus. Then, with a playful tone, he added, Make sure you teach me some sword techniques later, all right? To everyone's surprise, Yi Yu answered obediently, Yes, Hyung, I will. Jeongso seemed pleased and changed the subject. Hyang, don't you have a royal court session to attend today? You should hurry or you'll be late. Hyang smiled. Since your engagement was canceled, I'll be visiting more often, but for now, I have to go. With that, he walked off, leaving Yi Yu and Jeongso alone. Jeongso immediately slung an arm over Yi Yu's shoulder, causing the prince to shudder in fear. It's been a while, hasn't it? Come, spend a little time with me, he said with a mysterious smile. Back in the royal court, the king's voice echoed through the chamber. If the Ministry of Finance manages the monopolized trade directly, they'll run out of manpower. The left state counselor, looking half asleep, replied with his eyes barely open. That's correct, Your Majesty. To solve the manpower issue, we propose holding a recruitment examination. He raised his head with a smug look, thinking his answer would surely please the king. But King Sejong simply rested his chin on his hand, lost in deep thought. This isn't enough, still lacking. His gaze shifted to Hiang. What are your thoughts, Crown Prince? Hiang replied carefully. I believe it's a good proposal, but it would take a lot of time and resources. However, if we recruit scholars from the Royal Academy, I believe we can solve this more efficiently. The king nodded slowly. Interesting. I'll take it into consideration. The court buzzed with whispers. A major reform was on the horizon, and not everyone welcomed the change. King Sejong asked again, Scholars from the Royal Academy? The left state counselor looked surprised and responded, Your Majesty, while the Crown Prince's idea makes sense, those scholars have yet to pass the general exams. They're still novices. If we appoint them to official positions, it would be the same as handing out government roles to the inexperienced. Hiang firmly stood by his opinion. The scholars at the Royal Academy take monthly exams, don't they? Their scores are ranked clearly. If we select those who've consistently scored well in recent months, there's a high chance they'll pass the National Civil Service exam later. Those who pass will become outstanding officials with hands-on experience. Even if some fail, they'll still be capable civil servants, well prepared to manage state finances efficiently. Hearing this, His Majesty smiled to himself and thought, Well said, my son. Then, in a more serious tone, King Sejong turned to the left state counselor. What do you think? Cornered and unable to object, the left state counselor finally replied, I believe the Crown Prince's words make perfect sense, Your Majesty. With that, the king raised his voice and gave a firm command. Send a royal order to the Royal Academy to provide personnel for the Ministry of Finance. Also, establish a trade bureau under the ministry's supervision, down to the district level. The ministers all responded in unison. As you command. The next morning at the palace, many officials were visibly anxious, pacing back and forth with his uneasy expressions. The left state councillor approached the right state councillor with a confused look. Today isn't a royal assembly, just a routine meeting. Why are so many officials gathered here? The right state councillor let out a sigh. There's a royal decree today. All officials ranked level 2 or higher must attend. Something urgent must have come up. Just then, King Sejong opened the session. The reason I've summoned you all so suddenly is this. Last night, I received an emergency message from the Ming Empire. Hiang's eyes widened. The Ming Empire? What happened around this time in history? He wondered. The king continued, his voice heavy. The third emperor of the Ming Dynasty, Emperor Yongle, has passed away. The entire room fell silent. His Majesty sighed and asked, Does anyone here know anything about the prince who's next in line for the throne? No one dared to speak. The king massaged his forehead, clearly frustrated. Good grief, how could all of you be so clueless? The officials could only lower their heads in silence. Fine then, the king said. Assemble a delegation immediately to attend the emperor's funeral. Find someone well-versed in fortune-telling and a physiognomy expert, quickly. We obey, your majesty, the ministers replied in unison. In the corner of the hall, Hiang rested his chin on his hand, deep in thought. Suddenly, a court eunuch leaned in and whispered, His Majesty is in the next room. Hiang was taken aback. Really? He immediately opened the door with a smile and asked, What brings you to such a humble place like this? You rascal. Am I not allowed to come here? It's not that. It's just that your sudden visit surprised me a little, Hiang replied. The two of them went inside, sat down, and began to talk. Hiang, you're planning to search for books during this diplomatic mission, aren't you? The king asked. Yes, father. Even though the purpose of this trip isn't exactly ideal, I don't want to waste the opportunity. Besides, once the Joseon Embassy Hall is completed, it won't be difficult to find books, Hiang answered. The king pulled something out from his sleeve and said, In that case, try to find books related to this topic as well. Hiang looked at his father with a confused expression. Father, if it's just books, wouldn't it be easier to order the officials in the delegation to find them? King Sejong let out a sigh and clicked his tongue. If I did that, they'd probably cry and beg me not to. Hiang unfolded the paper completely, and his eyes widened as he saw the contents. He quickly turned to his father and asked in shock, Father, these are... The king nodded and confirmed, Yes, these are all books about phonology. Hiang's cheeks flushed. Phonology? He hesitated, then nervously asked, Father, may I ask why you're looking for books like these? The king sighed and responded calmly, I'm disappointed. Everyone in this palace is ignorant. Even when we need to replace them, it's not easy. Civil service exams in Joseon also have their limits. Even though there are many intelligent people out there, there will always be one or two who, even until their death, never fully understand Chinese characters. If we could create a writing system that people like them could actually read, wouldn't we be able to discover even more talented individuals? Still confused, Hiang asked again. But why phonology? The king explained. Every letter in Western books represents a sound. I believe that a writing system based on sound would be much easier for people to learn. Hearing this, Hiang thought to himself, this could change the course of history. Then, with a firm voice, he said, Father, I'll do as you wish. I'll make sure the envoys prioritize this list of books. This video ends here, but the story isn't over yet. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next part.